very much. I mean, I think this was the first time at this conference, so I'm going to sort of feel my way through this a little bit. It's been billed as a workshop session, and I've got about 20 slides today, just to sort of manage the time. So I think probably what I'll do is go through the slides and sort of set the scene a little bit. I've tried to make it as practical as possible, and then hopefully allow more time to open up for discussion and debate. Unless you've kind of been under a rock for about the last 10 years, you will have read lots and lots about brand purpose. I know it doesn't quite work like this, but I sort of did a Google search on brand purpose, and it threw up 238 million results. Donald Trump got 393 million results. So actually, for brand purpose to get 60% of his mentions is pretty impressive. And I know it doesn't quite work like that. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through based on what I've kind of understood and experienced in my life when I'm sort of been creating brand purposes for brands, what brand purpose is, and more importantly, what are the misconceptions of brand purpose, why it's become more important today, and why marketeers are getting particularly excited about it, me included, to hopefully pepper this with lots of good examples of how people kind of are articulating their company purpose, and how you might go about implementing brand purpose across your organisations. So hopefully that'll cover what you want. I mean, I think it's always good to start with the Oxford English Dictionary. Purpose, the reason for which something's done or created, or for which something exists. And I'm kind of quite a person that is fundamentally quite inquisitive, and I quite like that definition, and sort of it's certainly guided my thinking as I've been a marketer in my life, and previous to that when I worked in ad agencies, when clients used to come to me, and the first question I always used to ask is, well, why, what are you all about, and why do you exist? And I guess, if you want to, know where this kind of brand purpose thing came from, it's through this guy, Simon Sinek, who wrote all about why, where, I think obviously, he used things called golden circles, where the whole kind of philosophy of what he talks about is not to talk about what a company does or how it does it, but why it does it. Why do you get up in the morning? Why do your staff work for you? Why did you set this company up in the first place? Why does it exist? Why, if it disappeared tomorrow, will it matter? And I think that's fundamentally is what drives it. And of course, marketeers are kind of, it's been mentioned a couple of times today, we love a good buzzword, don't we? So we're sort of filled with onions and brand DNAs and purposes and missions and visions and so on and so forth. I've actually read recently that brand purpose will now finally signal the death knell of the mission and the brand vision. And I'm not quite there yet, but in my personal experience, I've just found that brand purpose is, as an approach to sort of defining your company, is just more useful, more inspirational, and just more active. Harbinger, a great Canadian brand company, worked a lot with Unilever in the past, and I think this definition sort of builds it into something that's a bit more actionable for us all as marketeers to work with. They describe brand purpose as the ownable, actionable impact your brand will make on the lives of your target consumers, rooted in a fundamental insight, and it resides at this intersection of what your brand offers, what the world is about, what the world needs, and what consumers care about. And I think for me, I think if you think about great marketing nowadays and the really successful companies, they're absolutely getting this right. Equally, I think as consumers, I think if you think about the brands that you really care about, it's those brands that are finding that great intersection of delivering a great product that you need, but doing it in a way that's making the world better or your life easier. Is brand purpose just for charities? I mean, I work at a charity, but absolutely not. And I think that's probably one of the most important misconceptions, that brand purpose is really about just about sort of doing a nice campaign with a charity like mine. it's been a great source of sort of quotes. I mean, SAP, companies that will lead in the 21st century define success more broadly than financial performance. They look at the impact on the world, socially, environmentally, and economically. And that's absolutely right. That's a company that's in the technology business talking about itself in a way that is altogether more inspirational and much bigger thinking. If you look at their kind of purpose, which is kind of hidden away down here, apologies if you can't see that, to help the world run better and to improve people's lives. And I guess probably the most talked about person, in the world of purpose is Paul Polman at Unilever. He's kind of widely, absolutely, fundamentally believes in their core purpose, which is written at the bottom, which is making sustainable living commonplace. Consumers increasingly want products of great value from companies with great values, and that's such an inspirational thing to sort of talk about. Imagine how inspirational that is for every employee at Unilever. Of course, the truth of it is that Paul Polman did not invent the brand purpose of Unilever. It was Mr. Lever himself when they invented Sunlight, where, actually the original purpose of Unilever was not actually that different when they invented Sunlight, which is to make the, sounds a little bit old-fashioned now, but to make the life of a woman in a household a little bit more enjoyable and easier and more sustainable and to give her products that make her life easier. Obviously, the modern version of that is as, and I'll come back to Unilever a little bit later on. Hewlett-Packard, whether you consider them to be doing well or not as a company, again, it's kind of, purpose is not a relatively new thing. This is what was written by the co-founder of Hewlett-Packard. I want to discuss why a company exists in the first place. In other words, why are we here? I think many people assume wrongly that a company exists simply to make money. While this is an important result of a company's existence, we have to go deeper and find the real reasons for our being. And, again, I think, some of you may think this is going perhaps a little bit deep, but, I think this is absolutely the kind of the language of modern marketing and modern CEOs. So why purpose and why now? I'm going to talk about sort of three trends that I think are sort of driving this at the moment. And let's start with the most obvious one, which is just changes in society. The transformation from old to new marketing, from what was kind of used to be very, very kind of rationally based marketing, so to identify the product differentiation and make sure that you consistently kind of differentiate your product and drive more value, to something that's altogether more emotionally based. And probably one of the main drivers of that transition is from old marketing to new marketing, apart from things like digital and social technology, which we'll come back onto, is just technology advancements in itself. That all make purpose brands like Uber or 3D printing or car finance 24/7, which I'll come back to a bit later on, possible. But it's not just digital technology, it's packaging technology, materials technology, food technology, and advances in FMCG, and how this makes kind of, FMCG brands like Unilever able to kind of fulfill a purpose of trying to create products and making money, but at the same time making the world a little bit a better place. Now, I personally hate the other kind of key trend, this sort of oversimplification of consumers into to millennials, and apologies because I think it's probably been talked about by every speaker today, but it's just my personal thing, which is I'm not sure it's quite that easy to sort of to identify a whole group of people as in one generation or as the same thing, but it's kind of useful in that I think it is being driven a lot by what modern what this generation wants and what its aspirations are. It's about them being more socially aware and really sort of driving this trend towards wanting to associate with brands, not just who make great products, but also do good for the world as well. And of course, to use a quote here, we need to stop interrupting what people are interested in and be what people are interested in is absolutely what's driving this. And I think people want to be not just buying products, but being part of campaigns and about knowing their place in the world. And I guess what that's really about is identity and brand ownership. It's about social media driving this kind of increased consciousness of the self. and it's about the growing role, not just of what a brand is about or what a product does, whether that's an FMCG product or a finance product or a modern product like Uber. It's about speaking to the modern consumer in a way that sort of exemplifies what they're about as people and speaks to them as people, so that brand is kind of consistent with their desire to belong. And of course, at the end of the day, as I said before, this great purpose brands are at the intersection of being able to make money, but also making the world a better place. Whether that's better just because it's making your life easier, or better because, frankly, we are facing certain challenges, as we know, with urbanisation, which is obviously kind of leading people to a sort of an increasingly sedentary and challenged lifestyle on a global level, but also, of course, kind of climate change and increasing issues of poverty and inequality that all kind of drive a lot of the passion and the purpose of CEOs across the world. But I think, again, to return to this point, I want to make the point that, I think the common misconception of brand purpose is that it's an adjunct of the CSR strategy of a company. It's absolutely not at its best. This company, which is a shoemaking company, Tom's, again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about these brands today, but, that's a great example of a company that just sells a product that we all need. But it was created by a founder, CEO, who thought, well, look, I'm going to sell shoes, but I'm also for every pair of shoes I sell, I want to make the world a better place. And that wasn't a marketing gimmick. It wasn't the one-for-one campaign wasn't the thing that launched Tom's. He absolutely has stuck with that from day one right to now. So there's a great example of a company that isn't just seeing brand purpose as an adjunct to their marketing campaigns, but is seeing purpose as absolutely core to what they're about. And of course, one of the other kind of the views on brand purpose is one of measurement, and whether you can actually, I think, to mention somebody from the panel chat this morning, where the most important measure for that gentleman was whether you could draw a straight line from what marketing does to how much money his company was making. And I don't know whether that guy's still in the room, but and I think that is what the other kind of challenge thrown back at brand purpose was that we can't actually find a straight line to profit, and companies like Unilever are demonstrating that very differently. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm sounding like a bit of a salesperson for Unilever. I'm not at all. But I think what they've been able to demonstrate, because they've now sort of identified the brands in their portfolio that what they consider to be their kind of purpose, their sustainability drive brands, is that those brands are achieving sort of double the sales growth of some of their non-sustainability drive brands. So again, I think we can maybe talk about that in a little bit more detail later. But it's absolutely the case that brands with purpose and can deliver to the bottom line. So it's not just a sort of something that makes the company look good. It also helps to drive profit. And of course, from my point of view, and I didn't want this to be a plug today, although I will mention that the Children in Need Appeal Night is on Friday the 18th, so please go and buy your ears. But I think great from our point of view at Children in Need, purposeful brands are brilliant because it's very easy then for us to start to have really good conversations about purposeful partnerships. Of course, now it's a really important part of how we achieve our aims at Children in Need, that we utilise the help of corporate partners, and we find alignment with corporate partners that, frankly, can do more than we can do. We're an organisation that's only a handful of people, so contrast that with Boots, which has 2,500 stores across the UK. That's the same number of stores as projects that we support. So we have 2,500 projects that we support, and Boots have 2,500 stores. So it's kind of this perfect marriage, because what we need to do is to find different ways of achieving change for children, and that's exactly what we're doing with Boots. Boots is probably, I don't think anyone would disagree, would be, considered to be the company when it comes to kind of having a sort of core purpose that's based on the future well-being of the next generation. And what we've been able to do with Boots, because their purpose is aligned with our purpose, is to utilise not just their volunteering expertise and not just the enthusiasm of their staff to raise money for us, but to use their expertise. Amongst the 80,000 employees of Boots are pharmacists, smoking cessation experts, dietitians, health and well-being experts. And so what we're now doing is starting to match their staff to our projects so that they are able to add more, to do more things for children other than raising money. And I think that's just a brilliant example of where their purpose is completely aligned with ours across every single community in the UK. Lloyds, who is our main principal partner again, core brand purpose, which is all about helping Britain prosper. It's about creating the means by which future generations can have the tools to be able to succeed in life and to have the acumen to get a job. So even on a basic level, you think about the problems that our children face and the families that we work with face, you know, it's even difficult for them to through sort of social, geographical and financial isolation to even get a bank account. If you don't have a bank account, then it's very difficult to form an identity. If you don't have an identity and an address and so on and so forth. So what we do with Lloyds, for example, is work through our schools program to use the expertise of Lloyds to kind of to drive you know, levels of you know, to sort of get rid of that isolation that people feel, to build a sense of entrepreneurship, to do basic things like writing CVs and hopefully create a more hopeful future for our children. And again, just to use a final example, Post Office, another great partner of ours, you know, again, a really, really clear purpose for the Post Office, which is to go against the kind of core trend of where a lot of high street retailers are pulling out of certain villages and towns because there isn't the justification for them to be there. Post Office is kind of intentionally finding a way of staying in the communities to solve that problem of real geographic isolation. It's the problems that I see in places like you know, down the valleys in Wales and certain parts of the northeast, where because the kind of industry is gone, but the people where people live have been left behind. These people are kind of completely isolated and unable to kind of break that cycle. So you know, again, an alignment of purpose with the Post Office, which enables us to kind of to do more for children, but do the right things that Post Office wants to do. Plug over for children in need. So, finding your purpose. I'm going to go through 5 steps, and this is just based on my experience of doing this as a, you know, in my previous role and as a consultant. I've kind of done quite a lot of stuff in helping companies, big and small, to kind of find their purpose. So I thought I'd just share with you 5 steps that I've gone through. You know, as I said, I've kind of thrown up this really simple diagram here, which is brand purpose ultimately is about finding this intersection between what the world needs, what you as an organization are good at, and what you're passionate about. And I think the first thing that we tend to do, the process we do, is called just dig and understand. You know, looking outward at those kind of trends that can sort of slightly start to inform the role that you can play in making the world better. Those trends can, of course, be to do with the economy, to do with society. They can do with the kind of the political context and so on and so forth. So, as an example, you know, if one was working with, say, Lego, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you know, brilliant, a company that is selling a hell of a lot of bricks to the world and continues to do so, but of course they're selling plastic products into the world. So how can Lego sort of ensure that at the same time as doing great things to help children to explore and play, that their sort of balanced scorecard, so to speak, isn't a little bit conflicted because they're negatively affecting the planet? And I think if you look at Lego's kind of core purpose nowadays, it's not about building bricks. It's not what they do. It's about how they're enabling creativity. So it's such that in the future, Lego doesn't necessarily fulfill its purpose just by putting more plastic into the world. It's finding ways of achieving change through other means of play. You know, if you were you know, pre-Uber, you know, I think one of the other things we do as we sort of dig around is just to think about how technology can really, really impact your business right now. I've worked with a company recently called Car Finance 24/7. You probably haven't heard of them, but they're growing massively. And what they're doing is just using technology to change the way that people get loans for cars. And that's only made possible because of what technology enables. But I think, it's interesting to sort of think about how technology can kind of Uberize your category and to be maybe one step ahead of that. So it's about anticipating the future, and it's about finding in the world the things that you look at and I think, yeah, that's why we exist, because there's a problem that we can solve, or an opportunity that we can anticipate. Of course, at the end of the day, the number two kind of key thing is to be true and authentic, to be very, very clear on what you are, to make it very relevant and make it very real. But the most important word on this chart is authenticity. Again, the biggest mistake you can make when sort of developing a brand purpose is to do something that is a little bit shallow and it doesn't kind of ring true to what you are as an organisation. For Volvo to make road safety for everyone, it's absolutely true to what everyone would know about Volvo. It's a kind of an evolution of where it was, which is to make sort of the safest cars, and it's now absolutely on a much kind of higher plane. So authenticity is absolutely crucial. The third thing is commitment from the top. I have never seen anyone land a decent set of brand values, pyramids, onions, bananas, values, missions, visions, unless the CEO and the senior management and the trustees and the directors absolutely believed in it. So don't even try as a marketeer to kind of to relaunch your brand unless you've got total passionate buy-in from the CEO. And I think that's absolutely important, crucial to this. Anyone who knows Parks and Recreation, I don't normally swear, but there is a quote, that's to be whole-assed, is obviously to not be half-assed about anything. And I think certainly when you're sort of committing to purpose, it has to be done with absolute 100% whole-assedness, embedded internally, explored externally, and kind of really brought to life. And so, again, to look at, Jeff Bezos, I mean, that's not an insignificant ambition to have, to be the Earth's most consumer-centric company. But if you read anything, or if you've ever seen Jeff Bezos speak, he absolutely lives and breathes his brand and totally believes in it. And therefore, everyone within Amazon lives and breathes it too. And finally, be open to scrutiny. I said I'd come back to measurement. It's about sort of, sometimes, as you pursue a purpose, it may not go perfectly, but I think in this world where anyone can kind of access information about you and will happily share it around the world very quickly, gone are the days when you kind of need to sort of hide behind bluff and sort of and sort of about your company. I think being honest about the journey that you're on and being honest about where you are as a company and where you're perhaps falling short is really, really refreshing, and that's what consumers love. And of course, again, apologies if I'm introducing things that you do or don't know, but balanced scorecards kind of, for me, are the way to do it. Anyone who doesn't know what a balanced scorecard is, it's kind of an approach to publishing the success of your company in a much more balanced way. So it sort of balances things like how profitable we are and what our balance sheet looks like and so on and so forth with other values that are important to that company. So how you're treating your customers and what consumers think of you and so on and so forth. So that's it from me. I mean, I think hopefully, yes, I have. Yes, I've kind of skipped through it quickly enough. And now what I really, this might not work, in which case we can all go for an early coffee. But I'm really keen now to open it up and really hear what you've got to say, because as you can probably tell, I'm very passionate about this. But it's really interesting to sort of to explore something like brand purpose and see how you might be using it in your company or not.
Firstly,